Good evening, everyone. I'm Brian Trumbore with your nightly review for Wednesday, February 13th. It is 4:01 p.m. Eastern Time, waiting for Cisco's earnings. Always enlightening. I was going through a box of old stuff today, and this is from my old office. I had this little scrap piece of paper in my under my blotter back then, and being the market junkie, I had scribbled down all of the high-flying NASDAQ stocks and what their all-time high was and the date. So, for example, Juniper Networks all-time high was October 16th of 2000. All of these are the year 2000, of course. $245 today 21. Rambus 127 today 5. Corning 113 today 12. EMC 103 in September of 2000. 24. Intel's all-time high is 76. August of 2000, it's now 21. JDSU 153. 15. And Cisco's all-time high was $82 set on March 27th of 2000. NASDAQ's all-time high was 5,048 March 10th. Well, the Dow Jones today was down 36 at 13,982. S&P 500 finished up a fraction to 1520, so that's another all-time high. Excuse me, that's another 5-year plus high. The all-time high for the S&P is 1565, set on August 9th of 2007. And NASDAQ finished up 10 to 3196. I do want to catch Cisco, so excuse me while I keep glancing back. Normally they're right on time. Okay, President Obama, in his State of the Union, declared, "We have cleared away the rubble of crisis, and we can say with renewed confidence that the state of our union is stronger." He called restoring the country's middle class, promise our generation's task. "We gather here knowing that there are millions of Americans whose hard work and dedication have not yet been rewarded. It is our generation's task to reignite the true engine of America's economic growth, a rising, thriving middle class." Obama argued for an active government role to tackle inequality with a specific proposal to raise the minimum wage to $9 an hour over the next 3 years. Obama spoke of $40 billion to upgrade bridges and a new energy security trust to seek ways for American cars and trucks to run on cleaner fuels. From Susan Page of USA Today, one of my favorites, incidentally, favorite Washington reporters. The State of the Union address demonstrated that Obama's muscular inaugural address signaled a change in his administration. In both speeches, he embraced a more liberal agenda and more confrontational style. He feels empowered by his re-election, advisors say, and liberated from ever running for office again. He's also applying lessons from the past few frustrating years. The question ahead is whether Obama's new strategy, which relies less on persuading members of Congress than pressuring them with the force of public opinion, will succeed in passing major legislation or simply create a new recipe for gridlock. That could be tested almost immediately on the looming battle over automatic spending cuts scheduled to go into effect on March 1st. Obama said the sudden, harsh, arbitrary cuts would jeopardize military readiness and slow the economic recovery. He said he would support modest steps to save money in Medicare, but also called for changes in the tax code that would hit the well-off and well-connected. Well, and Cisco came in at 12.1 billion revenue versus 12.06 billion estimate, so that's okay. Didn't see the earnings. It's up a bit in the aftermarket. 51 cents versus 48 cents estimate. Up just a little. Republican lawmakers reacted coolly to Obama's message, characterizing the program he outlined as a defense of big government at a time when they believe over-regulation and high taxes are keeping the economy down. In delivering the Republican response, Florida Senator Marco Rubio said, quote, "His favorite attack of all is that those who don't agree with him, that we only care about rich people. Mr. President, I don't oppose your plans because I want to protect the rich. I oppose your plans because I want to protect my neighbors, hardworking, middle-class Americans who don't need us to come up with a plan to grow the government. They need a plan to grow the middle class." From an editorial in the Wall Street Journal, the big question of President Obama's second term is whether he wants to forge bipartisan compromises in the next 2 years, or whether he wants to spend these years campaigning against Republicans to regain Democratic control of the House in 2014 and then finish his presidency with another liberal crescendo. Judging by his inaugural address and Tuesday night's State of the Union, we're guessing he's going for Speaker Nancy Pelosi. Mr. Obama's second inaugural was a clarion call to collective action, as he put it, and Tuesday's speech showed what he thinks that should mean in practice. The American people don't expect government to solve every problem, he said, while proceeding to offer a new government program to solve every problem. John Podhoretz, in an op-ed for the New York Post, "Kids aren't learning, try universal preschool because study after study shows it works, except for the study after study that shows its gains are fleeting. Manufacturing in trouble? It will be renewed through 15 government-funded hubs. Say, do you keep your lights on when you should turn them off? He's got a solution. I'm also issuing a new goal for America. Let's cut in half the energy wasted by our homes and businesses over the next 20 years. Infrastructure? I propose a fix-it-first program to put people to work as soon as possible on our most urgent repairs, like the nearly 70,000 structurally deficient bridges across the country." Okay, if that sounds a little too much like the New Deal to you, don't worry, the President will make sure taxpayers don't shoulder the whole burden. How? Simple. I'm also proposing a partnership to rebuild America that attracts private capital to upgrade what our businesses need most: modern ports to move our goods, modern pipelines to withstand a storm, modern schools worthy of our children. Podhoretz concludes, last night, in the course of this liberal fantasy of a State of the Union straight out of the West Wing, the President went back to his old decimal coinage bit by asserting that nothing I'm proposing tonight should increase our deficit by a single dime. He's either lying through his teeth or believes every word of it. Hard to say which would be worse. Too bad he didn't propose a hub on dimes and deficits last night to figure it out. Back to the Wall Street Journal. Its editorial concluded, "Mr. Obama has never lacked for confidence, and perhaps he is right that he can steamroll his opposition in Congress or in the 2014 midterms. It is also possible that his re-election and a fawning press have made him too confident that the country wants as much new government as he seems to believe. The polls show voters think spending is a bigger problem than lack of revenues. And for all his bragging Tuesday night of economic progress, his policies have produced a recovery with mere 2% growth and falling middle-class incomes. Without faster growth in the private economy, his grand liberal plans will vanish faster than he imagines. Personally, I would just add his throwaway lines on foreign policy were beyond pathetic. A few notes from overseas in Europe. President Hollande admitted growing problems with the economy and said the government will be lowering growth forecasts in the coming days. The nation's auditor, who is also a socialist, said the government has depended too much on raising taxes and trying to balance its budget and needs to focus more on spending cuts. In Italy, former Prime Minister Silvio Berlusconi has surged in the polls, but he's now being preempted by the massive coverage of the Pope's resignation. This, as critical elections are now less than 2 weeks away. One analyst in Rome told Bloomberg News, Berlusconi needs broad media coverage to regain votes because looking at the polls, should elections be held today, he would lose. The fact that the media are busy with something else for sure can hurt him. There's a polling blackout in Italy, and just before it went into effect, the center-left coalition led by Pierluigi Bersani maintained an average 6-point lead over Berlusconi, but with 30% of the electorate undecided. Bersani had led by 14 a month earlier. And just a note on the currency wars. Yesterday I passed on a statement from the G7 concerning the currency market prior to a meeting of G20 finance ministers in Moscow at the end of this week. The G7 statement was released on the Bank of England's website, and this is what I passed on. Quote, "We reaffirm that our fiscal and monetary policies have been and will remain oriented towards meeting our respective domestic objectives using domestic instruments, and that we will not target exchange rates." So that was viewed as very positive. The thing is, the full statement wasn't posted. The rest of it read, "We are agreed that excessive volatility and disorderly movements in exchange rates can have adverse implications for economic and financial stability, i.e., Japan, watch out." Richard Gilhooly, a fixed income strategist at TD Securities in New York, said, "Rather than calm the markets, the poorly communicated statement has significantly raised volatility, and now we have to wait and see the actual outcome of the G20 on the weekend." Turning to North Korea, Pyongyang, in response to reaction to its nuclear test from the U.S. and the UN Security Council, promised to unleash merciless retaliation if the world sought to punish it. South Korea's spy agency said Kim Jong-un might be ready to test another bomb or a ballistic missile within days. Dear leader Kim Jong-il's birthday is Saturday, so perhaps that's how the son will honor his father. North Korea's foreign ministry said the latest nuclear test was only the first action with which we exercise as much self-restraint as possible. If the U.S. further complicates the situation with continued hostility, we will be left with no choice but to take even stronger second or third rounds of action. Of course, the fears are mounting that Tuesday's explosion was a uranium-based bomb. One of the world's foremost experts on nuclear weapons, Graham Allison, wrote some of the following in an op-ed for the New York Times today. the most dangerous message North Korea sent Tuesday with its third nuclear weapon test is, nukes are for sale. The significance of this test is not the defiance by the North Korean leader, Kim Jong-un, of demands from the international community. In the circles of power in Pyongyang, red lines drawn by others make the provocation of violating them only more attractive. The real significance is that this test was, in the estimation of American officials, most likely fueled by highly enriched uranium, not the plutonium that served as the core of North Korea's earlier test. Testing a uranium-based bomb would announce to the world, including potential buyers, that North Korea is now operating a new, undiscovered production line for weapons-usable material. Hence, the grim conclusion that North Korea now has a new cash crop. As the former Secretary of Defense Robert Gates put it, history shows that the North Koreans will, quote, sell anything they have to anybody who has the cash to buy it. In intelligence circles, North Korea is known as Missiles Are Us, having sold and delivered missiles to Iran, Syria, and Pakistan, among others. Who could be interested in buying a weapon for several hundred millions of dollars? Iran is currently investing billions of dollars annually in its nuclear quest, while Al-Qaeda's core is greatly diminished and its resources depleted. The man who succeeded Osama bin Laden, Ayman al-Zawahiri, has been seeking nuclear weapons for more than a decade, and then there are Israel's enemies, including wealthy individuals in some Arab countries who might buy a bomb for the militant group Hezbollah or Hamas. President Obama has rightly identified nuclear terrorism as the single biggest threat to U.S. security. If terrorists explode a single nuclear bomb in an American city in the near future, there's a serious possibility that the core of the weapon will have come from North Korea. A National Hurricane Center report has concluded that Hurricane Sandy was the deadliest hurricane to hit the northeastern United States in more than 40 years, and it's one of the costliest on record. Sandy was directly responsible for 72 deaths from Virginia to New Hampshire. 20 of the 72 were killed by falling trees. The report says that at least 87 others died because of indirect ties to Sandy, and about 50 of those deaths were caused by extended power outages and frigid temperatures. Unfortunately, there were a lot of falls in the dark by senior citizens. The report also said Sandy caused at least $50 billion in damage, which would put it second costliest on record next to Hurricane Katrina. And finally, Carnival Cruise Line said it is canceling another 12 voyages for the Triumph cruise ship that's being towed to Mobile, Alabama. So that's on top of 2 other cruises that were called off shortly after Sunday's fire. Turns out this ship has had other mechanical problems in the past, and of course you're hearing the stories of what a freaking mess it is on board. But that's all for tonight. I'll be back with you on Thursday. Keep the men and women of our armed forces in your thoughts and prayers. Take care. Bye-bye. Only have eyes for